live.
Perfect. All right, what's up, Gab fam? Welcome back to the Daily Gab. Brian and Sterling. This is custom-made content, custom-made videos specifically for Gab users. Like we really put our heads together and brainstorm about kind of what we think you guys really need to hear and want to hear. Primarily about Bitcoin, but we're going to hit a bunch of major topics. Just politics, freedom fighting, all that as a whole. Because the topic for today is Bitcoin is an overarching protest. What I need people to understand is that Bitcoin is not a niche thing that only people in a certain income demographic are interested in, or only people that know how to code and use command line are interested in, or only it's just confusing. There's too many other coins. Why is Bitcoin important? Or I just really prefer hard cash and hard gold. Overarchingly, if you fall into any of those, kind of mindsets, we need you to understand just Bitcoin at a very higher fundamental philosophical level. And that's this. Look, when politicians are the money printers, that's where the corruption starts, at the very, very top. And we can talk about tinkering around at the edges, and we can talk about, maybe the money should go to this project instead of this project, or maybe we should elect this politician instead of this politician. That's all fine. But that's kind of just tinkering at the edges. We need to separate politicians from the money printing. And that's what Bitcoin is doing at a very, very high level. And nothing else in the world is doing that. Nothing else in the world is doing that. And so if you're listening to just kind of competing crypto narratives, or just kind of the gold narrative, or, cash narrative, none of that super addresses separating politicians from the money printing, and then trickle down everything else that you're passionate about as far as freedom fighting and censorship resistance and all this stuff. All of that gets easier as we continue to separate politicians from the money printing. So
yeah, I love the phrase separation of money and state, because we already have separation of church and state. And while church and state was a huge deal coming from, eras of chivalry before this, and eras of separate the church and state makes sense. The church isn't quite as power hungry these days as the government itself, and separation of state and money is so huge. Why do we allow lobbying and stuff like that? But as you were saying, man, the source comes from inflated money. They print $100 million, and then they give it to a book publishing company, and then that book publishing company has is the parent company of some other company that pays for that politician's book to be published, like $30 million or something.
mm-hmm.
That happened. That's a real story from Obama. His
Yeah.
book deal was what I'm talking about. Or they print money for those ridiculous grants of some scientist that's getting paid to look at cocaine birds, as I talked about in a previous
Right.
episode. All this corruption. Or if you're concerned about the environment and stuff, how about the rights to mine shit in the middle of the Congo, or deforest, the Amazon? Those are all when they have regulations for that stuff, some of those regulations make a lot of sense. You don't want to over deforest the Amazon or something like that. And then you look at how they do it, they're actually Hillary Clinton gets paid $1 million for a speaking event, and then all of a sudden she gives the Department of State some Congo schmooze over here, and then the Congo's oh yeah, we'll open your gold mine over here in Haiti, or your rights to deforest this Congo. So all of these things come from printed money. It's all hey, we've got the keys to the kingdom over here. We got the keys to the treasure. And yeah, if you use Bitcoin, what you're doing is creating this alternate system where your dollars don't fund any of that bullshit, and
Right.
it eventually comes down to taxes and stuff. But even apart from the taxes, just the fact that they're not inflating away your value is something huge. You get to keep all that value that you've worked for. And this goes into the Bitcoin is time thing, the how Bitcoin really only has 21 million, no other assets like that. We could find gold in the future, the way to mine gold on the undersea floor, and then we'd be massively inflating the gold even. So there's so many things about Bitcoin that make it's just the only scarce asset that works like that and works like money, and it's secure and goes towards decentralization instead of centralizing in your banks. So it's a lot of
Yeah.
stuff to say about it, man.
100%. Yeah. So ending the topic for today, like understand that Bitcoin is a like giant top level philosophical thing that is separating politicians from the money printing. And then from there, you can dive into the details, of how to run a wallet, where to buy it, how to budget in it and do that kind of things. But I know a lot of people here are aligned on the philosophy of that. And so I want them to understand that Bitcoin adds to things they're already passionate about.
And that's why I really like just Gab in general. Just when I buy merch on Gab and I see that they're like holding Bitcoin on their sheet and they're like using it to pay developers and stuff. They're like banned from Coinbase, so they're probably not selling that shit. I know that a few developers are probably paid in the Bitcoin, and that's a good feeling that when you're contributing to this company just to get your own free speech, you're also contributing to like a greater issue in the whole world.
Yeah.
Inflation affects
We're all
every single
exiting
person
together.
on this earth.
Yeah.
So,
Yep. Perfect.
and
All right,
tomorrow,
guys, we'll see you tomorrow.
yep. Later, y'all.